stranded among the stars. The emergency beacon pulsed its final desperate cry before dying with a pathetic spark. Ambassador Krillin of the Vorthok Empire slumped against the navigation console, his four arms hanging uselessly at his sides. The diplomatic cruiser Eternal Wisdom drifted through the endless void, its engines silent, its crew gone. 3 hours ago, Krillin had been reviewing treaties for the upcoming summit with the Zelethi Collective. Now, he was the sole survivor of an attack that defied all logic. No warnings, no demands, just precise strikes that had crippled their shields and vented half the ship into space before anyone could react. His security detail, his advisors, even young pilot Vex, all gone in moments. The attackers had vanished as suddenly as they appeared, leaving Krillin with a dying ship and rapidly depleting oxygen. His crystalline scales, usually a vibrant blue, had dulled to a sickly gray. The Vorthok Empire prided itself on technological superiority, yet here he was, helpless as a newborn. He checked the life support readings again. 18 hours of breathable air remained. The nearest Vorthok outpost was 3 days away at sublight speeds. His distress beacon had transmitted on all Imperial frequencies, but the vastness of space swallowed such signals like whispers in a storm. Krillin closed his primary eyes, leaving only his secondary pair open to monitor the systems. The Empire wouldn't send a rescue mission. Not for a failed ambassador who'd lost his ship to unknown hostiles. The Vorthok way was efficiency, not sentiment. Resources went to the strong, the successful. The weak were forgotten. A bitter laugh escaped his throat. How many times had he heard the High Council dismiss humanity? Primitive, they'd called them. Emotional creatures barely out of their stellar cradle. The Vorthok had achieved faster than light travel when humans were still burning fossil fuels. What could such a young species possibly offer the galaxy? Static crackled through the dead bridge. Krillin's secondary eyes snapped wide. The communication array shouldn't have any power left. He leaned forward, manipulating the controls with practiced precision. More static then. A voice. Rough, unrefined, speaking in the harsh consonants of human standard. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth cargo ship Starlight Runner. We're picking up debris and radiation signatures consistent with combat damage. Do you require assistance? Krillin stared at the speaker. Humans, of all the species that might have detected his plight, it had to be humans. His pride warred with desperation. Accept help from a species his people considered beneath them. But what was the alternative? Die alone in the dark, another casualty of whatever hunted these shipping lanes. The human voice came again, patient but concerned. Unknown vessel, please respond. We're reading life signs. But they're weak. We can render aid, but we need confirmation. Krillin's hand hesitated over the transmitter. The Vorthok had 4 hands, each capable of independent action. Yet all 4 trembled now. He thought of home, of the crystal spires of Vorth Prime he'd never see again if pride kept him silent. This is Ambassador Krillin of the Vorthok Empire, he finally responded, his voice raspy from the thinning air. My vessel has been attacked. Systems are failing. The words stuck in his throat like shards of glass. I require assistance. Copy that, Ambassador. Hold tight. We're adjusting course to intercept. ETA 15 minutes. Can your life support hold that long? Krillin checked again, though he knew the answer. Affirmative. 18 hours remaining. Good. Hang in there. Chen out. The connection closed, leaving Krillin alone with his thoughts. 15 minutes. He'd survived 3 hours since the attack. He could manage 15 more minutes. But what then? Board a human vessel? Trust his life to a species that had barely mastered interstellar travel? He accessed the ship's cultural database, reviewing what little the Empire had bothered to record about humanity. Emotional, unpredictable, prone to illogical decisions based on sentiment rather than efficiency, yet also adaptable, resilient. known for responding to distress calls regardless of species or affiliation. The minutes crawled by. Krillin found himself checking the chronometer obsessively, each second stretching into eternity. When sensors finally detected an approaching vessel, he almost didn't believe it. The Starlight Runner was exactly what he'd expected from human engineering. Blocky, utilitarian, held together by welds and determination rather than elegant design. Where Vorthak ships were works of art, this was pure function. Yet it moved with surprising grace, sliding alongside the crippled Eternal Wisdom with practiced ease. Ambassador Krillin. Captain Chen's voice returned, warm despite the static. We're extending our docking collar now. Our atmosphere is compatible with Vorthak physiology. You should be able to breathe normally once you're aboard. The docking procedure took only minutes, but each second felt like an hour to Krillin. When the airlock finally cycled open, he stood on shaking legs, gathering what dignity remained to him. An ambassador of the Vorthak Empire did not show weakness, even in extremis. The first human he saw was Captain Chen herself. She was smaller than he'd expected, barely reaching the middle of his torso, with dark hair streaked with premature gray. Her eyes, though, those held a sharpness that reminded him of veteran commanders. "Ambassador," she said, offering a slight bow. "Welcome aboard the Starlight Runner. I'm Captain Sarah Chen. This is my first officer, James Murphy." The man beside her was taller, broader, with skin the color of rich earth and scars that spoke of a life lived hard. He nodded respectfully. "Sir, let's get you to medical. You look like you've been through hell." Krillin wanted to refuse, to insist he was fine, but the gentle sway in his stance betrayed him. Yes, perhaps that would be wise. They guided him through corridors that smelled of metal and recycled air, past crew members who watched with curious but not unfriendly eyes. The medical bay was small but clean, equipped with basic scanners that seemed almost primitive compared to Vorthak technology. "Sorry it's not what you're used to," Chen said, noticing his expression. "We're just a cargo hauler, but Doc Martinez knows her stuff." The doctor was an older woman with silver hair and gentle hands. She ran her scanners over him with practiced efficiency, muttering in Spanish before switching to standard. Dehydration, oxygen deprivation, stress markers through the roof. Nothing a little rest and fluids won't fix. As she worked, Krillin found himself studying these humans. They moved with easy coordination, speaking in shortened phrases and half-completed sentences that somehow conveyed complete thoughts. There was no wasted motion, no unnecessary formality. Just efficiency, but a different kind than the Vorthak practiced. Warmer, more organic. "Can you tell us what happened?" Chen asked once the doctor had finished her initial treatment. "We've had reports of attacks in this sector, but nothing concrete." Krillin hesitated. Sharing intelligence with another species, especially humans, went against every protocol. But these people had saved his life, and perhaps the old protocols no longer applied. "They came from nowhere," he began, his voice stronger now. "No identification, no demands. Just violence. Precise, calculated violence. They knew exactly where to strike to cripple us without destroying the ship entirely." Murphy frowned, like they wanted to leave evidence or survivors. Perhaps both. Krillin's scales shifted, a sign of deep thought. "There have been other attacks, haven't there? Your people have encountered this threat." Chen and Murphy exchanged glances. 3 cargo ships in the last month, Chen confirmed. "No survivors, until now." "Then we have information to share," Krillin said slowly. "Your kindness has earned that much." Chen smiled, a small expression, but genuine. "That's not why we helped you, Ambassador, but we appreciate the gesture." She paused, then added, "You should rest. We can talk more when you're feeling stronger." As the humans filed out, leaving him to rest, Krillin reflected on the strange turn of events. He'd been saved by a species his people dismissed, shown kindness without expectation of reward. Perhaps the High Council had been wrong about humanity. Perhaps there was more to these emotional, illogical creatures than the Empire realized. He settled back on the surprisingly comfortable medical bed, feeling safer than he had since the attack. Outside, he could hear the crew going about their duties, their voices carrying a warmth that Vorthok efficiency had never achieved. For the first time in hours, Krillin allowed himself to hope. The Starlight Runner continued its journey through the dark, carrying its unexpected passenger toward an uncertain future. But at least now, he wasn't facing it alone. United against the unknown. Krillin awoke to the smell of something that definitely wasn't standard Vorthok nutrition paste. His secondary eyes opened first, scanning the medical bay before his primary pair joined them. The human doctor, Martinez, was checking readings on a console near his bed. "Ah, you're awake," she said, her wrinkled face creasing into a smile. 12 hours of sleep. Your body needed it. 12 hours. Krillin sat up abruptly, his scales flushing purple with embarrassment. "I apologize. Vorthok do not require such extended rest periods after trauma like yours." "Yes, you do." Martinez's tone brooked no argument. "Even superior species need time to heal, Ambassador." Coffee. Coffee. The word was unfamiliar. Human stimulant beverage. Might be a bit strong for your system, but it'll wake you up. She poured a dark liquid from a thermal container, the aroma both bitter and enticing. Krillin accepted the cup cautiously, taking a small sip. The taste was aggressive, but as the warmth spread through his system, he felt his thoughts sharpen. Fascinating. We have similar compounds, but nothing quite so immediate. That's humanity for you, Martinez chuckled. We're an impatient species. The door slid open, admitting Captain Chen and First Officer Murphy. Chen carried a data pad, her expression serious but not unkind. "Ambassador, how are you feeling?" she asked. "Restored, Captain." "Thank you." Krillin set down the coffee cup, straightening to his full height. "I believe we have intelligence to discuss." Chen nodded, activating the data pad's holographic display. A star chart materialized in the air between them, marked with red indicators. "These are all the attacks we know about. 37 incidents across 6 species territories. No survivors except you." Krillin studied the pattern, his analytical mind engaging fully for the first time since the attack. "They're not random. Look." He manipulated the display with practiced gestures. "If you adjust for stellar drift and trade route variations." The dots aligned into a clear pattern, a spiral tightening toward the galactic core. Murphy whistled low. "They're hurting us, or hunting something specific." "The question is what?" Chen added. "And why leave you alive, Ambassador?" Before Krillin could respond, alarms shrieked through the ship. The lights flickered to emergency red, and Chen's communicator crackled to life. "Captain." The voice was tight with fear. "Contact bearing 270 Mark 5. It just appeared. No warp signature, no sublight trail. It's just there." Chen was already moving. "Battle stations. I'm on my way." She glanced at Krillin. "Ambassador, you might want to come to the bridge. This could be your attacker." Krillin followed without hesitation. His hearts, all 3 of them, pounding in his chest. The human bridge was cramped compared to Vorthok command centers, but the crew moved with practiced efficiency. On the main screen, a shape materialized from the darkness. It was like nothing in any species database, not quite organic, not quite mechanical. It shifted and flowed like liquid metal, sprouting sensor arrays and weapon pods seemingly at random. Where a Vorthok ship was crystalline perfection and human vessels were functional boxes, this was chaos given form. "No response to hails," the communications officer reported. "All frequencies." "Distance?" Chen asked, sliding into her command chair. 40,000 kilometers in closing. "Speed?" "Captain, it's not using any drive system we can detect. It's just moving. The entity pulsed, and every screen on the bridge flickered. Then, impossibly, a voice emerged from the static. Not through the comm system, directly from the charged air around them. Survivor located. Analysis incomplete. Further data required. Krillin's blood turned to ice. He recognized that voice, or rather, voices. It was a composite, pieces of every species it had encountered. He heard Vorthak tones, Zealoty harmonics, and underneath it all, something older, hungrier. Chen's jaw tightened. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Starlight Runner. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The entity pulsed again. Identification, irrelevant. Intentions, completion. The survivor will be reclaimed. Like hell, Murphy muttered, fingers flying over the tactical console. Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildup. It's preparing tow. The first strike hit their shields like a sledgehammer. The Starlight Runner groaned, metal straining against forces it was never designed to withstand. But the shields held, barely. Return fire, Chen ordered. All weapons. Human weapons were crude by galactic standards, mass drivers, nuclear torpedoes, focused lasers. They lacked the elegance of Vorthak plasma cannons or Zealoty quantum disruptors. But they had something else, versatility. The mass driver rounds did nothing, passing through the entity like it was smoke. The lasers were absorbed, their energy seemingly feeding the creature. But the nuclear torpedoes. The explosion blossomed in space, not just destroying but disrupting. The entity's form wavered, momentarily losing cohesion. In that instant, Krillin saw something impossible. A structure beneath the chaos, a pattern that tickled the edge of recognition. Wait, he breathed. I know what this is. Chen glanced at him, even as she coordinated their defense. Talk fast, Ambassador. Old Empire technology. Pre-Vorthak, pre-anyone. We found ruins on dead worlds, facilities that seemed to build themselves. The High Council declared them too dangerous to study, but he accessed the ship's computer, his four hands working in concert. I served on the research team before joining the diplomatic corps. This isn't a ship or a creature, it's a probe. A probe that's been killing people across the galaxy. Murphy demanded, launching another torpedo salvo. Not killing. Testing. Krillin's scales had gone pale with realization. It's looking for something specific. Some quality, some response. The attacks aren't random, they're experiments. The entity had recovered from the nuclear disruption, its form solidifying into something more traditionally ship-like. Weapons ports opened along its hull, glowing with energies that violated several laws of physics. Shields at 30%. Someone shouted, "We can't take another hit like that." Chen's mind raced. A test, an experiment. What was it looking for? What made Krillin different from the thousands it had killed? "Ambassador," she said suddenly, "you said it left you alive. Why?" "I don't know. I was reviewing diplomatic." Krillin stopped, his four eyes widening. "The translation protocols. I was running universal translation algorithms, preparing for the summit. My ship's computer was cycling through every known language pattern when we were attacked." "Communications," Chen said slowly. "It's looking for someone who can communicate with it. Really communicate, not just exchange words." She turned to her crew. "All stop. Drop shields." "Captain," Murphy protested. "That's suicide." "No," she said firmly. "It's human. We're going to talk to this thing. And we're going to use everything, every language, every mathematical concept, every piece of music and art in our database. Overwhelm it with communication." The bridge fell silent except for the proximity alarms. The entity loomed closer, its weapons still charged but not firing. "Do it," Chen ordered. What followed was chaos of a different sort. The Starlight Runner broadcast everything. Bach and binary, Shakespeare and Vorthak poetry, mathematical proofs and children's lullabies. Krillin added his own knowledge, the diplomatic protocols of a dozen species, the translation matrices he'd been studying. The entity stopped. Its form rippled, shifted, began to change. The weapon ports closed. The chaotic surface smoothed. And then, for the first time, it truly spoke. Query acknowledge. Response processing. Standby. Minutes passed like hours. Then the entity's form split, revealing a core of impossible geometries and swirling light. From that core, a tendril of energy extended toward the Starlight Runner. "Captain," the sensors officer whispered, it's trying to establish a direct interface. Not with our computer, with us." Chen stood, squaring her shoulders. "Then let's interface." She looked at Krillin. "Together, Ambassador." Krillin straightened, his scales shifting to a deep blue-green, the color of resolve. "Together, Captain." They stood side by side as the energy tendril passed through the hull like it wasn't there, touching first Chen, then Krillin. The contact was electric, overwhelming, like trying to understand an entire civilization in a single moment. Images flooded their minds. A galaxy-spanning civilization, dead for millions of years. A final desperate attempt to preserve their legacy, to find inheritors worthy of their knowledge. The probe, one of thousands, searching endlessly for minds capable of understanding, of bridging the gap between order and chaos, logic and creativity. It had found them. The connection lasted only seconds, but when it ended, both Chen and Krillin knew they were changed. The entity withdrew, its form now stable, almost serene. "Requirements met," it announced. "Knowledge transfer authorized. Beacon activated. Others will come." "Others?" Chen asked, her voice hoarse. "Other probes. Other tests. The inheritors have been found. Prepare." With that, the entity folded space around itself and vanished, leaving only a small crystalline object floating where it had been. "Retrieve that," Chen ordered quietly. Then she turned to Krillin. "Ambassador, I think we need to have a very long conversation with both our governments." Krillin nodded slowly. "Indeed, Captain. Though I suspect they won't believe us. Then we'll have to convince them," Chen replied. Together. The Starlight Runner turned toward human space, carrying its cargo of impossible knowledge and the promise of a changed galaxy. The Vorthic Empire would have to reevaluate humanity. Earth would have to accept its place in a larger universe. And somewhere in the void, other probes searched for other inheritors, building a network of species united not by politics or power, but by potential. Krillin stood on the bridge beside his human rescuers, watching the stars wheel past. He'd been taught that humanity was primitive, emotional, illogical. Now he understood the truth. Those qualities weren't weaknesses. They were the very things the ancient probe had been seeking. Logic alone couldn't bridge the gap between species. Cold efficiency couldn't unite a galaxy. But perhaps logic tempered by emotion, efficiency warmed by compassion. Perhaps that combination could achieve what no single species could alone. The future stretched before them, uncertain but bright with possibility. And for the first time in his long career, Ambassador Krillin of the Vorthic Empire looked forward to the chaos it would bring. In the medical bay, Dr. Martinez poured herself a cup of coffee and smiled. Sometimes, she thought, the universe knew exactly what it was doing when it threw unlikely allies together. She raised her cup in a silent toast to the strange partnership forming on the bridge above. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, she decided, was exactly as it should be.